I'm Mrs. Hazeu, and I'm one of the librarians here at the collegiate campus. It has been my privilege over the last number of years to read to every grade at the elementary campus for I Love to Read Month. This year's theme of fairy tales got me thinking about what my favorite fairy tale would be, and I went with Hans Christian Andersen's The Emperor's New Clothes. Today, I will read from 3 Royal Tales. It's retold by Marilyn Helmer and illustrated by Diana Bonder. The Emperor's New Clothes. There was once an emperor who so loved fine clothes that he spent most of the gold in his treasury on them. Room after room of the palace was filled with his vast wardrobe. Still, the emperor was not satisfied. One day he said to his prime minister, "Send out a proclamation that I will pay any price for a new suit of clothes. But," he added, "the suit must be made of cloth so remarkable that nothing like it has ever been seen before." Word of the emperor's offer spread throughout the land. Unfortunately, the news fell on dishonest ears. Before long, 2 strangers arrived in the city and asked to see the emperor. "Your Majesty, we are master weavers," they announced. "We can produce a cloth so beautiful and so remarkable that even you, the emperor, have never seen anything like it." "It is the most beautiful cloth in the world," the first weaver replied. "And it is remarkable enough to please even an emperor," said the other, "for it has a special quality found in no other cloth." "Beautiful and remarkable too," repeated the emperor, rubbing his hands in anticipation. "But what is this special quality?" "To some people it is completely invisible," replied the first weaver. "Invisible?" gasped the emperor. "What kind of people cannot see it?" "Fools," said the second weaver. "People who are not fit to do their job," added the first. "Make me a suit of this remarkable cloth immediately," ordered the emperor. Turning to his prime minister, he said, "Not only will I be the best dressed emperor in the world, but I will also learn which of my subjects are fools and not fit to do their job." "For you, your Majesty, we will charge a mere 3 bags of gold," said the first weaver. "The cost does not matter," said the emperor with a wave of his hand. He paid the weavers their price and gave them a room in the palace where they could work. As soon as they were alone, the weavers congratulated each other on their cleverness. "The emperor doesn't suspect a thing," said the first weaver. "Now we shall see who is the biggest fool of all," said the second. Day after day, the weavers sat at their empty looms, pretending to weave. The emperor became impatient to know how the cloth was coming along, so he sent his prime minister to check on the weavers. Next to himself, the emperor believed that the prime minister was the most intelligent man in the empire. Certainly he would be able to see the remarkable cloth. When the prime minister entered the workroom, the weavers held out their hands as though they were showing the cloth. The prime minister was barely able to conceal his shock. Although he stared and rubbed his eyes, he couldn't see a thing. "Oh, whatever shall I do?" he said to himself. "Since I can't see the cloth, I must be a fool and unfit to do my job. The emperor must never find out." So the prime minister praised the cloth, calling it radiant, marvelous, and magnificent. Then he hurried back to the emperor and said, "Your Majesty, the cloth is every bit as remarkable as the weavers claimed it would be." The emperor was delighted. Scarcely had the prime minister left the room when the weavers appeared and demanded more money. "We need to buy gold and silver thread," said the first weaver, "so that your new clothes will be absolutely perfect," added the second. The emperor gave them another bag of gold, and the weavers returned to their looms. As the days passed, the emperor grew more and more impatient. Finally, he sent his wisest counselor to check on the weavers. The weavers held out their hands just as they had before. The wisest counselor blinked and squinted, but of course there was nothing to see. "The prime minister saw the cloth, but I cannot see a thing," he said to himself. "Gracious me, am I really a fool? The emperor must never know." So the wisest counselor hurried back to the emperor and said, "The cloth is as remarkable as the prime minister said it was." Again, the emperor was delighted, and again the weavers demanded more money, which he promptly gave them. Another week passed. Unable to wait any longer, the emperor decided to go and see the cloth for himself. When the weavers held out their hands, he stared in astonishment. The first weaver spoke up quickly. "Is it not splendid, Your Majesty?" "Have you ever laid eyes on anything like it?" asked the second. Of course, the emperor couldn't see a single thread of cloth. "But this is impossible," he said to himself. "Both the prime minister and the wisest counselor were able to see the cloth. Can it be true that I, the emperor, am a fool and unfit to do my job? No one must ever know." "Indeed, it is everything you promised," he said to the weavers. "I must have a new outfit for the grand parade next week. Be sure my suit is ready by then." "We will begin sewing immediately, Your Majesty," said the first weaver. The second took out a measuring tape and carefully measured the emperor for his new clothes. "The suit must be decorated with pearls and precious stones," said the first weaver. "We will need more money to buy them," added the second. The emperor gave the weavers yet another bag of gold. Word of the remarkable cloth spread quickly. On the evening before the parade, the workroom was lit late into the night. The townspeople gathered around the windows, eager to catch a glimpse of the remarkable cloth. When they peeked in, it looked as though the weavers were hard at work, cutting, pinning, and sewing. Yet no matter how hard the people stared, they couldn't see any cloth at all. The next morning, the weavers came to the emperor's dressing room. "Your new clothes are ready, Your Majesty," said the first. He held up an empty hanger. "Have you ever seen anything to compare with this suit?" asked the second. "I have no words to describe it," said the emperor, although he saw nothing but the empty hanger. He stripped to his underwear, and then piece by piece, the weavers pretended to dress the emperor in his new clothes. When they had finished, the emperor stood in front of a mirror. "A perfect fit!" exclaimed the first weaver, smiling from ear to ear. "Our best work ever!" agreed the second. The emperor blushed, for all he could see was himself standing in his underwear. But he turned this way and that, as though admiring his new clothes. "Others will see my remarkable clothes," he said to himself, "and think how impressed they will be. At least those who aren't fools." So with his head held high, the emperor proceeded to the palace gates. "Let the grand parade begin," he ordered. As the trumpet sounded, he led the procession to the town square, where the people were waiting to see him in the new clothes. When the townspeople caught sight of the emperor, a mighty gasp went up from the crowd. Believing it was a gasp of admiration, the emperor held his head even higher. He looked from left to right, smiling proudly, while the people struggled to disguise their shock. Not a single person could see the emperor's new clothes, but no one dared to admit it. As the emperor marched past, the people called out, "Beautiful! Spectacular! Magnificent!" Suddenly, a small child shouted above the noise, "The emperor isn't wearing any clothes!" For a moment, all was silent. Then someone called out, "The child is right! The emperor has no clothes on!" People turned to each other laughing and pointing at the emperor. "He has no clothes on," they cried. "The emperor is marching about in his underwear." The emperor heard every word, and his face turned scarlet with embarrassment. But he could not call off the parade, for he was too proud to admit that he had been fooled by the tricky weavers. So on he went, as if it were perfectly normal for an emperor to march through the streets wearing nothing but his underwear. When the grand parade was over, the emperor sent soldiers to find and punish the weavers for deceiving the emperor was considered a very serious offense. But like the remarkable cloth they wove, the weavers were nowhere to be found. The end.